I've just had an hour-long conversation with Matthew about many topics, including two companies, Seritage and Daily Journal Corporation, which we'll probably get to at the end. And I just wanted to ask Matthew some questions about his business, because I think they're really interesting. And I think that there's a lot to learn for me and for other people. And so, Matthew, one of the first times that I met you, you showed me your annual budget, personal and business budget, written down on a square piece of paper, and you kept to it religiously. Can you just talk about that period in your life and how you managed yourself and what was going on?
Guy, that is such an interesting question.
I feel bad. You look away. It's kind of like,
no,
you don't want to answer that.
It's like, oh boy, so we're going to really go deep here.
Is it a painful place?
No, it was a strategy that ultimately was successful, but it was incredibly necessary. Look, Guy, I don't think it's a surprise to most people that when you start a fund, some people come from enormous wealth to start a fund. People come from all sorts of places, but I had a job on Wall Street and I saved as much as I could for almost a decade. And it was an incredible role that I played, consulting for Goldman. And when I left, I had a few $100,000 saved. And that was my runway. That was my budget. I had a young family, new wife, and we moved to California. So I was extremely careful about what we are spending, and we had to launch a firm. And it's, you spend maybe 50,000+ if you launch it on a hairstring kind of budget. And then I wanted to invest in the fund myself. So I invested the first 100,000. Someone else put in 25,000. So we launched, over 10 years ago with 125,000. And I sort of had maybe 200 or 250,000 that I had to make last. And some of that was even in a retirement account that I did not want to touch, and I never had to touch. So yeah, we were very strict. And one way that I made it clear to myself is I put a little laminated, budget in my wallet, and I sort of stuck to it. And there weren't a lot of luxuries. And I think we were in about year 4, and we maybe had 5 million under management. And we were probably talking about something that made me feel like, Guy, I should actually show you what's really going on, because although I want to do all of these amazing steps, it's not quite possible yet. So that was a very interesting time. And we managed.
And I think that the reason why I ask you about that, and I think that one of the reasons why you are inspiring to me, is that you are a prime example of somebody who's willing to make himself vulnerable. So you've run your business, you are willing to put yourself in a financially vulnerable situation, and you kind of, in all sorts of ways, wear your heart on your sleeve, not just with your friends, but with life. You're not afraid of exposing that vulnerability, letting people know, kind of like, you've been perhaps less so now than ever in your life. And in fact, now maybe you're not on the bleeding edge anymore, but you've lived a good 5 to 7 years on the bleeding edge of starting your business, and you're willing to stick with it. And so I guess, 2 follow-up questions to that is, what made you courageous enough to be vulnerable in that way? And also, what made you willing to stick with this program? So I think that, and I think that it's okay to ask this as part of the question. Many people faced with the same set of circumstances that you were faced with, in spite of having the ambition of building a successful fund, would just say, I can't do it. And they would close it down, they'd go get a job, they'd go do something else. What distinguishes you from those people? What made you able to do that?
It's a great question. I'm not sure that I have a perfect answer, but I it could be that I was naive, but for some reason, since I was very young, I really wanted to run a fund. And so I studied economics and math. And, you know, there's always, I think, hurdles. And I think I find it, I enjoy solving problems and getting over hurdles. I just don't want them to get in my way. I mean, I think it's like you can fail at doing what you don't want to do. So why not just do what you want to do? And then if you fail, then you just go back to doing what you didn't want to do in the first place. So who really cares? I had a successful career out on Wall Street. I could always go back. That wasn't what I wanted to do, but there was a plan B. And so, I was kind of going to give it my best shot. And, a lot of the things, I mean, you taught me a lot, Guy, as you know, but around year 5 or 6, I think I told you, hey, I really want to write these annual reports like you do. And you said, well, then you just have to do it. I said, well, I have such a small fund. Who would read them? But you convinced me. So I just started doing it. And you gave me this recipe. I said, well, if I at least don't do the recipe, then I'm not giving it a fair shot. So, I don't know what differentiates me necessarily, but I really was passionate about what I wanted to do. I knew what I wanted to do. I think that's a luxury, to know what you want to do. And so I wasn't going to give up because I ran out of money. And I never quite ran out of money, but we were very close.
You know what comes up for me, Matthew, is that what came up for me when I had the opportunity to interview or have a public conversation with F.W. de Klerk, the former and recently passed away president of South Africa, who led South Africa out of apartheid. And he in a certain way, you kind of, you gave for me a non-answer, which is also an answer. In other words, you didn't come up with some formula or some set of tricks. It's just inside your personality. And with F.W. de Klerk, when I tried to understand what made him capable of doing the extraordinary things that he did to lead South Africa outside of apartheid, he kind of in a certain way didn't understand himself. He gave a non-answer and I think that where I come out at so both you and F.W. de Klerk have been capable of making yourselves vulnerable and putting yourselves in a position where you may not succeed, but you do it anyway. I think that my theory is that probably from one or both of your parents or from somebody else, you at the end of the day go to bed each night knowing that you are deeply loved and knowing, and you've made friends with yourself. You're not at war with yourself. And yeah, that's where it comes down to. I don't know if you want to comment on that.
Well, I appreciate the comparison, first of all, so I'll start with that. I absolutely, look, I think having a strong upbringing and loving family is extremely important. Even Buffett will talk about those types of things, how fortunate we are, where we come from. Look, I don't know how to respond exactly. I do think that having a great support network is incredibly valuable. And certainly I do have that, and it's helpful. And yeah, what can I say? I think
you don't have to say anything, Matthew, and no problem. And you should know that I have enormous respect for you for that. And I think that one of the things that I benefit from having you in my life is that you make me more courageous to be vulnerable myself. But moving on.
Hey, it's great to see you here. If you enjoyed that video, I'm sure you're going to love this next one we put together. We'll see you there.